Mimi common mwananchi niko na ignorance, arrogance, uovu, uchovu, uoga na maneno za bure. Mgeni siwezi mchinjia kuku. Kuna vile nilieka mayai zote crate moja zikapasuka sokoni, tukiwa demonstration tukidai haki zetu. So kikuja kunitembelea, kuja na gumboots, gloves, barakoa, helmet, full overall. Vitu mingi ni chafu and unhealthy. Barabara mbovu, road to success inabonga matope, mkono chafu, from takataka tukudunga mwenzako kisu kwa ile kona. Beba CD mingi, music board ni dirty, alapo beba VCT kit, nusisahau kuweka pills, vijana wanahitaji. Mdomo mingi, kuropokwa ndio mingi sana. Mimi common mwananchi, I cannot hold my leaders accountable. Public participation na jifichi na private room. Kura sipigangi, niko kabila, sina gari ya kujibeba. Ukulima uti wa mgongo, niko na back pain. Hapo nyuma nimebeba Ego Pro Max, pressure kwa koo, gas kwa tumbo. Ushuru bado maendeleo kwa waleweza, mapendeleo mamboleo na cheo. Democracy ni fair kwa tajiri, kwa maskini ni unfair. Same Bible, Injili ndio tofauti. Same flag, national anthem tofauti. Same window, view ndio tofauti. Na shindo tu kuna rangi mingi sana. How comes hatuwezi tengeneza rainbow? Hatuwezi tengeneza kitenge? Something beautiful. The change we all wanna see. If you want to make a change, I think tunafaa tuanze sisi mwenyewe before tufike hapo mbele. Tusianze kuidai greener pastures na ground hakuna nyasi. So tuanze kujitegemea sahi. Nite kijana mtanashati aliyetoka mtaa na shati. I represent Activista Nairobi movement.
Asante sana. I believe we can click our fingers louder than that. Thank you very much. That was kijana mtanashati. Karibuni once again. My name is MC Stano, and I'd like to shortly hand over to our moderator for this first session. I don't know how many of you have a copy of the program that I am looking at. Do you? Okay, probably not. Maybe I will just read the topic for discussion. This is Walking the Tightrope, Economic Fairness in Kenyan Public Finance, Governance and Service Delivery. And our moderator is none other than Bonnie Tunya, who is an in-country marketing and communication specialist, Innovate UK. Let us give him a round of applause. Yes, now you can clap the way you are used to. Thank you very much. And on our panel, we have 3 panelists present. I will start, of course, with the lovely lady in the middle. Madam Diana Gishengo is the Executive Director for the Institute for Social Accountability. Makofi kwake tafadhali. And we also have with us Dr. Abraham Rugo, who is the Country Director for International Budget Partnership. The MC is standing in front of the panelists. Pole Elizana. Makofi kwake tafadhali. That is Daktari. And last but not least, Leonard Wanyama, who is the Regional Coordinator for East African Tax and Governance Network. Round of applause, please. So without much further ado, let me hand over to our moderator, Mr. Bonnie Tunya, to take us through this session. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Okay, great. Good morning once again. Thank you for making time to be part of this dialogue, and thank you for being here all week long. I think the spirit of this gathering is allowing people to come together from all walks of life, from government, private sector, ordinary citizens, students, future leaders, to just come together and talk about the things that we care about as a country. And that's what we'll be doing in the next few moments as we start now. We do have live stream, as we said, so we will be having audiences that are joining us virtually. And so I'll encourage you to participate, because that is the whole essence of dialogue. We have a team of very excellent and experienced speakers who will be sharing their thoughts. But more importantly, you also would like to hear your thoughts about the issue that we'll be discussing today. And so I will be giving you a chance to raise your thoughts, to raise a question, a comment, or just to share your thoughts about the issues that we'll be discussing. MC Stano has already introduced the panel that will be speaking here, and we'll be grappling with the question of walking the tightrope and the question of economic fairness in Kenya's public finance governance and delivery system. Basically, we'll be spending time to understand the contract between you as a citizen and the Kenyan government. And we'll be exploring how do we make that relationship better, what is not working, and how can we improve it. Part of these questions, like we said, we'll be exploring how your relationship with the government. And so we are expecting participation, interaction from the government as well. And so we had invited the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, who's a majority leader for the Kenya National Assembly, and that's his seat. If he still joins us, we'll be happy to have him take some of the questions that we'll be taking. Without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like us to just get to this. And perhaps I'll start with Leonard, because the relationship between people and the government are anchored on a contract that is characterized by something called tax, right? Basically, you agreeing to be a Kenyan, and how you show that is by saying, I will pay tax. And for the benefit of us, and just break it down for me, just what the tax landscape, what is tax, and what should be the ideal relationship between a citizen and their country?
Thank you very much, Bonnie. As had been mentioned, my name is Leonard Wanyama. I am the Regional Coordinator of the East African Tax and Governance Network. Briefly, this is an organization with various members in civil society, individuals, and so forth, who have come together to champion tax justice for sustainable development. In that sense, trying to make sure that there is fairness in taxation, but also in the larger public finance management system. So that is budgeting, spending, and so forth. Now, simple politics 101, when a country is formed and a territory is set, for it to be sustained, there needs to be a resource. And the resource is taxation, because the citizen accepts that to be part of this country, they will give their tax so that they could get certain services. And in that sense, guaranteeing their citizenship. And this is what we call the social contract. Other than the fact that you are born here, you have a community here, and all other aspects that guarantee your citizenship, the fact that you pay taxes here is the place that guarantees your rights and access to services such as health, education, water, sanitation, and so forth. And so tax is the glue that actually keeps everything moving together and working in terms of resources. In that sense, and maybe just to quickly delve in, I think the relationship in Kenya is a relationship where there is increasing tax burden because there is a revenue distortion, a problem with the way we are handling our revenues. Why is this the case? Because of essentially public finance indiscipline. And in that sense, when you look at tax and then link it to the other aspects of the budget, we are failing in terms of not getting the right targets. We are not equitably allocating the resources. When it comes to spending, it's not properly done. And when theft is happening, it's not properly punished. So these distortions mean that there's a lot of loopholes, wastage, and corruption. And the quick fix means that government has to come back and add more taxes. And if you look at our current situation in Kenya today, we are really pained by the tax situation, whether it's pay as you earn, whether it's value added tax, the price of commodities, and so on and so forth. there is great strain for majority of Kenyans in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. You brought the question of fairness. I think there's a bit of feedback on your mic. You brought the question of fairness. How many people here feel that, or you're happy with the current tax situation? It's okay to raise your hand. How many are not? Great. That's a good place to start. And Diana, let me just bring you in now. Leonard has talked about this unfairness that stems from something he called indiscipline. And my question is in very simple English is, we understand a country needs taxes to run. As a people, we have willingly accepted to pay taxes. But where did we go wrong?
I'm not sure we have willingly accepted to pay tax.
That's not a revolution.
I hope we can get to that point where people pay tax because they understand and they see the value of tax. And where people feel, I am so much a part of this government that if they misuse my tax, they no longer deserve it. Because that is the heart of the social contract. The same way we elect people. And my MP here, if ukiona nimetupa mbao, you know I am addressing Honorable Ishungwa. This is his seat, okay? He was supposed to be here. He's the leader of majority. In 1971, and I am calculating using the current dollar rate, Kenya had a public debt of 70 billion. At that point, we were 12 million Kenyans. Deni yetu ilikuwa 70 billion. By the time Kibaki exited, we were headed for 2 trillion. Okay? From 70 billion to 2 trillion. Today, our debt is well above 12 trillion. We are 54. Unajua hata deni na tax inafaa kugrow na population. The two do not correlate. The population growth versus, say, the growth in public debt and so on, they do not correlate. Something happened and we decided we must just borrow. But why do we borrow? Most of the times, and I can see we have students, but I can see we have people who are already, and I'm told nowadays in school we are learning financial planning na mambo kama hayo, si ndio? But pia mnakuanga na pocket money yenyu. Si unajua ile pocket money mzazi wako ukupea kila term kabla uende half term. Unaweza kopa more than Kenya wewe unapewa na mzazi wako. Hauwezi kopa, si ndio? Utarudisha na nini? Ukikopa, tuseme mzazi wako huwa anakupea pocket money ya 2K, si ndio? Alafu uamue utakopa beshte yako 5K. Utalipa na nini? Utatoa wapi pesa? Wacha interest. Hii pesa umekopa 5,000 na wewe unapatanga 2,000. Either ukienda midterm uende haso upate hii pesa, uende nyumbani uuze avocado za mama yako irregularly, ama uibe, si ndio? Gava inaweza iba? Inaweza iba? Gava uiba? Now, over time, we know how much we can collect comfortably in tax. Sababu ushuru inafaa kuwa contribution. And even historically, tukisha harvest, all communities used to take a certain portion to help with running of government, but you remained with enough harvest for yourself to continue running your own activities. So what government has done over the years, wako na hiyo behavior ya mtu wako na standard pocket money ya 2K but anashindanga akikopa 5K. Ndio alipe lazima akope 8K. Within no time lazima kila saa anajifichia everybody. Because uko na madeni kila mahali. By the time you're borrowing more than you need and you will ever get, it also means you're not clear where you're taking that particular money you're borrowing. That is the history of debt in Kenya. The first inquiry was done, proper recent inquiry for my age, na mimi si youth, was done by the then finance minister, Amos Kemunya. Already, our debt was questionable. Aka-analyze, akaangalia, akaona, deni hata ikichukuliwa, hatulipangi. Kuna mtu anashindanga akileta the same invoice. And that is what formed the bulk of, say, the Anglo leasing scandal. But the problem in government is we have very good mechanisms for accountability. But there are also very good mechanisms for stealing public resources. One of the easiest resources to steal is debt. Deni. Ukisha kopa pesa, si tumekopa kama serikali. For those who borrow money, the minute the money comes, my first loan, I ate all of it. I upgraded my house, my furniture. It was very nice. Good money. But when I paid all my other loans, I have to sit down, even refuse to take a loan when it is extremely painful. A similar trend exists in government. And remember, kuna methali mingi sana za deni. Unaweza kunja sura, lakini dawa ya deni ni kulipa. So all our debts, they are always a fast charge. It doesn't matter whether it was utilized properly. The people in treasury know we must pay debt before anything else. So debt comes in, it does not give us the development that we need, then it is misappropriated and repaid back at very high interest rate. It strains our tax, and yet government continues to budget without remembering the indiscipline they have had of borrowing and using money they don't have and they will never have.
Diana, let me just jump in because you've brought in an interesting thought. So first, Leonard established for us the relationship, and you've said perhaps the reason of what went wrong is we are basically living beyond our means. We have more than, what we should be having in terms of debt. I'll come back to you on the...
Though, please note, we are not living beyond our means.
Yeah.
We living this... There's even a different terminology for it.
Right.
Unajua beyond your means is you're being extravagant. No,
right,
we are just extractive. The government is extractive.
Right.
Because
so we are misappropriating.
Yes.
Okay.
We are wasting.
We are wasting.
We are wasting. We are not even living beyond our means.
Okay.
We do not experience the luxury. Ordinary Kenyans have no services.
Right.
It's slightly different.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get it. So whatever was meant to be is not. Great. We'll come back to that, but I want to bring Abraham Rugo because you've done a lot of budgeting on this. And just back to Diana's point, where we are in a situation where, yes, taxpayers are paying willingly or unwillingly. Money is collected, but this money is never enough for the basic things we need to do. And so we end up borrowing more, which comes to the question which everybody has had of public debt. And there's been a big conversation of public debt where people are saying, is the government wasteful? Are we spending the money in the wrong things? And can we do without this? Abraham, in a very basic understanding, just help us understand this question of public debt and where we are now.
Thank you so much, and thanks for putting this together. It's a pleasure for me to be participating in this conversation. And I work in an organization where we do budget analysis as the International Budget Partnership, Kenya. And our job is to work with the citizens, which is ourselves, in our different forms of organizing, to be able to engage with public budgets at the national level and at the county level. And at the county level, there's a lot, and at some point I'll invite you to our booth next to the SDG Village just to hear more about how you can be involved. But let me start by saying that why budgets matter, even before I come to the public debt question, because I'll connect it, is because it's your money. And if I was to put it in a bigger way, hizi ni pesa zetu. It's our money. You may argue it from whichever angle you want to argue, but the fact is that it's our money. Why do I say that? Because if you look at the current budget of 2023-2024, the budget we are implementing right now, it's a budget of about 3.2 or thereabout. So let's say it's a budget of about 320 shillings. Out of that budget of 320 shillings, 250 is what will be collected as, not 250, 290 is what will be collected as taxes of different forms. The figure could go up or down depending. And therefore you're saying a big portion of the 350 or 320 is actually coming from your pocket and my pocket through taxes. So let's not ever get confused that Easy Pesa, there's a benevolent government, there's a nice guy up there, the president or the parliament, that then allocates some money that they have and then they do some things. Pesa ya shule, pesa ya hospitali is money that we are contributing, and we will continue giving the greatest portion of our money to that. Secondly, I think it's important to say that there is no time, at least not in the foreseeable future, when what we want to do as a country can be sustained fully by what we have as income. And the reason for this is because if you look at any sector, health, education, agriculture, infrastructure, ICT, the demands are immense, and we are a growing country. And therefore that is also not in doubt. And therefore what happens is that every time you have a certain income and you have a certain expenditure, the difference there is what then brings about the question of borrowing. But even the borrowing is not borrowing out of empty, because what happens is that we go into a budget process, and right now we are just starting the budget process for the following year. We decide on the things we want to spend on. And for the students, because I see many students here, if you read no other part of the Constitution of Kenya, which I want to encourage you to read, I would like you to read the Bill of Rights. Because what the Bill of Rights chapter 4 does, it states what we as Kenyans have committed to give to ourselves. Let me take an article like Article 43. It says that every Kenyan has the right to the highest standards of, I will not read as it is, but education, health, water, food. Basic. In other words, by the time we come to say now we need to provide money, we need to be taxed. That taxation is coming to provide a service, a good, a product that we have already committed to give unto ourselves. And therefore the rights and responsibilities, sorry, I've taken a bit of time just to explain, because that's important. Every time I'm involved in these conversations, I see we miss that fact that it's us as Kenyans. And whether you voted for this constitution or you did not vote does not matter. That's the constitution we are running. That is what the government is implementing. Including the government formation, we are the ones who have chosen to give ourselves the kind of form of government we have. That's why we put it in the constitution. So nobody's doing each other a favor. We are rightfully. So citizens have a right to access public services, public goods across the republic. But the government also has a right to access taxes across the republic. So those two rights have to also be balanced with responsibilities. What has happened with debt? I think Diana has explained a bit more, but let me just bring a bit of meat into this conversation. In realizing that we do not have, and do not have, I think is debatable, because I still feel we can still do much more with much less. What do I mean? We do not have to borrow so much to be able to provide public services. Even the 2.5, the 2.9 every year, and also important, let me just take one step back. The idea that the country does not collect sufficient money is a fallacy. Every year, for the last many years, let me use the Kibaki years. When Kibaki became president, our tax collection was 250 billion. And you can go and check for yourself. 250 billion. In mathematics, if I was to bring it down to below 1,000, basically we were collecting 25 shillings. This year, I just want to show you how monumental the growth has been. This year is 20 years later. We expect to collect 250. How much is that growth? 10 times. From 250 billion to 2.5 trillion. What does that mean? Our revenue collection has been growing. And every year it's growing at an average of 10%. In other words, kama ni mtu anafanya kazi mahali, mshahara imekuwa ikigrow at 10% almost every year. The question is, are we maximizing, or have we decided that debt becomes the only way that we can be able to meet these expenses? And therefore, right now, as Dan has said, we are at 12 trillion. What does 12 trillion average mean? 12 trillion means that our debt, if you compare to how much we collect this year, totality of about 3 trillion, is 4 times our revenue. If we were to tukaitwa leo tuambiwe lipa pesa yenyu yote, it's about 4 times that. But that's not the problem. The problem is not that our debt is 4 times our revenue. The biggest problem is twofold. One, what kind of investments have we put this money that we borrowed to? The reason for that, all of us sometimes have been involved in some form of business. When I finished, I've always struggled whether I finished or I completed high school. Nikaenda hustle, kibarua. I decided to sell clothes huko nyumbani Nakuru. So my mom gave me a loan ya kununua bail. I think it was about 3,000 shillings. Kaenda nikanunua bail. Na unajua bail inakuanga kubahatisha. Utaambiwa ni jumpers, lakini huko ndani unaweza kuta sheets. So anyway, I got a loan from my mom. I went and sold, and at the end, by the time I was done with the business, I had run a loss. Now, take an example. If I took that same money, nikaenda raha, nikaenda nikapiga sherehe, si nimemaliza high school, nipige sherehe. If I came back to her, I would not even have the 2,000 that I paid back, because the rest of it didn't quite work out. So the question is, are we investing? And that's a big question which you have not been answered. Parliament has not answered that question to date. In their report of last year, they asked the National Treasury to document all the projects that have been funded through public debt, their status, and then brings me to the second problem. How equitably have we distributed these projects that we have funded with public debt? Has the person in Mandera experienced the same kind of project as a person in Kisumu, as a person in Kiambu, as a person here in Nairobi? Because all these people are citizens of the republic, and none has an equal and higher right. So those two questions I think are critical when we discuss the debt question. Is, have we spent rightly to things that big us? And you see, last week, 2 weeks ago, time has moved a lot. When did the Eurobond get sorted? 2 weeks ago. Hii Kenya vitu zinasonganga mbio. 2 weeks ago, we had to take a loan to pay another loan. Because the loan we took, we did not spend it for the things we set out to spend it on. As a matter of fact, the Auditor General, and the report is on the Parliament website, did an assessment and said about a third of that money was spent outside the system. Another third was spent out there to pay another loan, a syndicated loan. And the other third is anyone's guess. So, if we are having to take loans, and the loan is even more expensive than the loan we had taken before, to pay another loan, then that raises a question that we are not spending our money to investments. And that's the challenge with debt, because sometimes we just talk about the numbers, and we don't talk about where did we spend it. And I want to dare anybody in this room to count with one hand how many projects you can tell offhead. And with that fact, remove SGR. I would like you to tell me which other projects you know have been funded through our public debt. Of course, there are roads, there are many, but I would like you to point them.
Right.
And they are completed. Because if we don't answer that question, it means that we need to rethink how we are investing our money. Otherwise, we continue putting in more money,
Right.
no return, and then we get into this vicious cycle.
Right, and Abraham, thank you for really breaking it down, because I really want us to take a common sense approach to all these things. We are moving away from the heavy economic jargon to really helping each understand. So what we are saying is that in simple terms, if you are borrowing to pay another loan, that is the first red flag of financial impropriety or lack of proper financial prudence, which is where we are as a country. We're also agreeing that if you look at where we were as a self-sustained country, if we were to call that during the Kibaki days to now, there's a fundamental problem of how we use our resources. And Leonard, we all are aware of some measures that are put in place to try and control this. And I'd like to refer us to the Financial Management Act of 2012, which has obviously been improved over time, and there's been lots of amendments. So there was a tool that has been created to try and meet these things. Your area of expertise is really to ensure that the taxes that we pay are done in a fair manner, and fairness means people actually get value for their paying. I would like you to just respond to what are the loopholes, and we may not have time to go through all the significant loopholes, but from the top of mind, what are the glaring loopholes in this tool that we created, the Public Finance Management Act, as a tool to sort of rail us back? But what are we getting wrong consistently?
Thank you. If we look at our public finance management system, and we are beginning to see this, and this is why we refer to it as an indiscipline, because it's essentially a culture where even if you have the right tool, you look for a loophole and mismanage things. And it's an approach that assumes that with government, money is there. So with every administration, the loopholes, the wastage, the corruption is just that fine. You have a good instrument, but we can mismanage it because money is there. Because there's no thinking about the fact that we need to deliver services. Now for us, and it's something we are looking at going forward, there is a need to increase a lot more of civic education in that, and adoption of a human rights-based approach to public finance management. There are 5 pillars to that: about participation, about accountability, non-discrimination, empowerment, that you have to consider the livelihoods of people, and legitimacy. How does the rule of law apply? Because if you keep fiddling around with legislation, as we are seeing with things like the housing levy or the finance bill, you lose the legitimacy. Hence, at an instant here, you found people saying they are not happy with the tax situation. So the legitimacy question is hurting the current government, the current parliament, and in fact, for us in civil societies, on a light note, we might begin to offer public finance management psychotherapy or something. Because the lack of consideration of citizen concerns truly does not respect the social contract.
Right.
Right.
And I'd just like to read out a quote for you that will now usher us, because we said this is dialogue, so it's not just about the people on the stage speaking to us. I want us to hear from you as well. But this columnist who wrote and said, the high cost of indiscipline in Kenya's public finance management system extends far beyond the mere financial losses. It erodes public trust. It hinders the government ability to mobilize resources for development, and hinders its efforts to achieve its socioeconomic goals. It also breeds resentment and frustrations amongst citizens who witness their hard-earned tax revenues being squandered through mismanagement and corruption. Do you agree with that thought? Great. I'd like to open the floor right now to take any of your thoughts, comments, and then my eminent panelists here will be happy to respond to that. It could be a question, it could be a comment, it could be just your thoughts on where we are. But even as you raise the question, if you could have this at the back of your mind, where do we go from here? Right? So as you share your thoughts, if you could also share with us, where do you go from here? If you get the mic, tell us your name, where you're from, and just one question each so that we get enough people speaking. Who wants to go first? There's a hand at the corner. So there's two hands on my right. We can start with the gentleman at the corner, and then we'll come here. Tell us your name, where you're from, and please, one question, be specific who you want to address, or if it's a comment, just one comment so that we keep moving.
Hello, my name is Vincent Mokaya. I'm from Nyamira County. I have a concern. The concern is about the issue of taxation and whether we do get value for our taxes that we pay. Because if the government, for example, collects enough taxes, then why are we not getting the services that we are required to get? For example, one of the issues that have been of concern is the issue of getting passports. Why would someone, for example, take a whole year to get a passport, and yet it is the work of the government to provide these services, and yet maybe they are paid for these services?
Right.
Why are they going to queue for those many years and months, months and years, and yet it is a service that the government need to render to the people?
Right.
Then the issue of over-taxation. Why are they increasing taxes, for example, on basic public services like of getting ID? I think this should be something for everyone.
Right.
Why are they increasing the taxes for getting these basic needs?
Okay, so the first bit on the question of taxation, I would like Diana, if you could respond to that. The second bit, we've all agreed that we're not getting value for our taxes. But the first bit of the taxation, if Diana, you could comment on that. I think on the other issue of the increment in charges for services like acquisition of IDs and passports and whatnot, I think that's a matter that's still yet for determination. So let's not bother too much about it. There's been concerns have been raised through a court of law. That will be addressed. But Diana, over taxation.
We are being overtaxed because we have allowed the government to overtax us.
That's a simple answer.
That is the simple answer. We are overtaxed, yes. Housing levy was increased, right? We accepted it, or so it was deemed. Because the concept is every year, when Parliament passes a budget and says, this year's budget is 4.3 trillion. The concept of taxation is no taxation without representation. So if Kenyans are not opposed and keep celebrating that we have a 4.3 trillion that has this amount of deficit, we need to raise this, you have given MPs power to tax us. We then come to the finance bill. At least last year, Kenyans tried to speak. But the minute we stopped at the court, we ended it there. Yet our constitution, current constitution, allows us to stop MPs from continuing to levy higher charges. To make this sink home better, after the housing levy, Parliament has increased their budget. Why? Because their employer, who is Parliament, must pay their housing levy. That means we must pay more tax for parliamentarians to pay their bit. They forget we are their employers. So consistently, this has gone on because Kenyans have not been interested enough in the treasury. Kibeti ya Kenya tumeiwachia wanasiasa. When you think about taxation, the people with pay slips are the ones who are able to calculate it best, and they are feeling the pain. But the informal sector that cannot count properly through one pay slip is paying more than 65% of their earnings are going to tax directly. So that is exactly where we are. And if you allow me, it is also linked to why we must pay for even legal identity. This is an indication of a failed government, people. It can no longer deliver basics using tax. We therefore must pay 1,000 to get an ID, a birth certificate. Yani mpaka kifo. Hatutalia, tutafanya mchango ya bill ya hospitali na tufanye mchango ya birth, death certificate ndio tuanze succession. That is a serious problem. And even as we go to court, these dialogues, take them to Nyamira, take them elsewhere. Otherwise, what Leonard and Abraham are not telling you is the minute tulichukua hiyo Eurobond na 10% na tukachukua infrastructure bond na 18%, ushuru tumejiekea miaka mingi kwamba lazima iendelee kuongezeka. Na tunasema tuko stable. Kama mko stable, endeleeni kupiga ushuru bila kupiga kelele. If there is a problem, please do something.
Thank you, Diana. Great. There are now more hands. So there's that hand there, and then we'll come to you. Please, yes, there's that one. There. You had your hand up. You want to put it up again? Okay. Okay, great. Then we'll come this side. Please limit your comments so that we have a lot more. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Witness Amoya from Starehe Boys. And my question is very brief. Now everybody is pointing fingers, and I wanted to know that we're supposed to be the one who is supposed to be accountable for all these problems, because all the people who are learned are just telling us that the taxes are increasing and the people are misappropriating the funds. I want to know who's supposed to be held accountable for this. Thank you.
Okay, great. As we respond to who the hands we should be pointing, let's have another question here. And I want to hear from the ladies as well. So until you give a lady at the back as well. So please.
Okay, thank you. I'm Thomi John from the National Taxpayers Association. So when it comes to tax increment, I think I have two hats. So at some point I advocate for a decrease, at some point I advocate for an increase, but on a specific area. But mine is on public finance and the issue of odious debt. So if at all there are some debts and the issue of double invoicing and the rest, where can we start from? There have been accusation of our records at the Treasury not being in line. So as CSOs and the general public, where can we start? Thank you.
I would want Leonard, you take that. Let's have another question. Could we have a lady, please? There's a lady. Okay, come here.
Hi guys. For me, I have one. I'm Kevin Kimani from Embakasi North, from an organization called Bangla Disability Nairobi Network. For me, I have a question. When Kibaki was the president, we launched a program called Cash Transfer, whereby it was 2,000 shillings for every person with a severe disability and the elderly. But up to date, when Uhuru was the president, when he was leaving, he launched the increase of the cash transfer. And up to date, there's nothing going on. And it has come to a place whereby you see, even right now, even the wheelchair or the white kins, the assistive devices, it's hard to get. For me, I have a question whereby I'm asking, where do we go and complain? And where is the government trying to frustrate the issue of the disability sector? Because right now, issue of disability has become very, very hard to bring our issues and to see where and to get to know where can we go to bring a grievances. Because the National Council, they are not doing anything. Everything is increasing and everything is increasing, but they are not talking, and the government is not saying anything. So I would like to ask the panel, how can you give us an advice where to go and do our complaint or get this help? Thank you.
Great. I'll take one last hand at the back. There's a lady at the back that will respond
Hello everyone, my name is Nyambeka Bridget, KCA University, AYLF. So my question is, I'm sorry I didn't get the name, but the lady has said that we failed as Kenyans. But doesn't this bring us back to public participation? There have been funds allocated for public participation, but how many times do the leaders we have in position come to us and seek for our opinions? And when they do come, they come late with very hectic documents, limited time. And when we go to, let's say we go for the forums for public participation, like they rush the process. We don't get our, and if they're delivered by the people, they're not put into place. Now, how are you supposed to tell us that we failed as Kenyans? It's our it's our leaders, the leaders we chose have failed us as Kenyans because public participation is not happening as it should.
Right, thank you. So, please what we'll do, ladies and gentlemen, there's lots of questions. If you could summarize your responses real quick, so we just try and get those answers out there because they can get to people that respond to that. So, before we go into the line, we started on Zephyr Leonard. We just respond to the question that we picked up. The mic there. Okay, great.
Thank you. My responses will come from mostly experiences because I need to make it relatable. The gentleman spoke about cash transfer and whatnot, but if you have time, I'd like to welcome you and your colleagues to Okoa Uchumi Coalition, if you have an organization or you are a group of you, because I remember when we started going for the finance bill, one of the reasons why we challenged the mobile money tax was because there was taxation on the cash transfer, and yet it was being compared with the taxation that was supposed to be for betting. Now, someone who's enjoying themselves, you cannot compare with someone who's getting a government service. Now, this is a fight about the devil in the details. If you don't show up, ignore you. So we can maybe have some time. You can join us on the coalition. We see what we can do and grow the movement on that front. Secondly, there's a young man from Starehe about responsibility. I'm assuming you are either approaching 18 or thereabouts. You are the swing vote in the election in 2032. So be prepared. The loan that we've taken will be your responsibility. That is on that part. Nonetheless, again, just to catch up with the other colleague, that is Tommy, if I'm not wrong, we need to put fire to the feet of Parliament. They are the responsible party in guiding or guarding the Kenyan pass. They need to do more. They can't just push things aside as they are doing it.
Right.
And just one last thing, again, another experience about public participation. Look at it as do what you can. If you want to change a clause, just focus on the clause, go and present on that clause, speak to it like you believe. Because when we started, I remember we had one tie. I shared my tie with an MP who was being chased away, former MP Kiriro Wanguki. They told him, you're not coming in because of standing orders. I gave him my tie, he presented, another gentleman who didn't have a tie, but we all got to do. I went there to just make a submission for, I think, 2 things. Him, he had an encyclopedia. But do what you can. Show up when you need. Never give up. Thank you.
Okay. Diana?
Thank you, and I'll respond to 2 things. One is on odious debt, where then we have all these challenges of debt that was either double invoiced or debt that was acquired but was never utilized. What can we do? This parliament has already sanctioned an audit for the last 1 year, and there were enough questions that were raised. Again, the people we must face na macho mbaya, macho yenye haifungiki, is parliament, because they are the only ones who can lead us to audit odious debt, go as back as 10 years, and we therefore remove it from our debt stock. we anticipate as Okoa Uchumi, if we audit Kenya's debt. Dr. Rugo has asked, unaweza hesabu how many projects that have gone into, that have developed this country and are as a result of debt. There are very few. We may reduce our debt stock by 40. Kenyans, I'm so uncomfortable speaking about the Eurobond because it is unconstitutional, completely unconstitutional. Our public finance chapter and the Public Finance Act does not allow government to borrow money to pay debt. Government is only allowed to borrow money to pay, to develop, not to pay debt. So if we have decided to borrow $1.5 billion, shauri yao. Hiyo wenye waliomba walipe. It should not even get to that level.
Right.
But it requires a lot of citizen pressure for us to get this right. Then there is the question of by Rebecca on who is to blame. Ultimately, the people who bear the highest responsibilities are MPs. But what do we tell ourselves when it is barely 1 year since we had the general elections? We decided to vote because of a shilling, of the color of the party, of the ethnic composition, forgetting this is the person who ought to determine the economic trajectory of this country. When that happens, we'll have to blame ourselves. But increasingly, and as Okoa Uchumi, we are urging Kenyans. Public participation, wakipanga kivyao, in a way to exclude us, we must create avenues to finally create the needed awakening so that our voices are heard. Mm-hmm. Whenever they come, and I can assure you, I am not an economist. These people on this panel try to educate me every time. I am getting a few things. But in the process, I know the fundamentals. Budget si ngumu hivo. If they come to your constituency, you know of a bridge, ask them, iyo bridge iko kwa iyo budget. You know you need a certain health facility, ask exactly that question, but understand which level of government. Ask questions that concern you, do not be lost in the very complex document. If we do that, many county level budgets are changing because of that. The national level government is more difficult, but if we organize ourselves, the real power and the responsibility to pay tax and debt in future lies in us. So we cannot give up as yet or wait for an election cycle.
Thank you, Diana. Abraham, take us home real quick. Where do you go from here?
One is that I don't want anybody to leave this room feeling hopeless. So I want to encourage you. I'm still a young Kenyan, not as young as Diana, but I've been in this from 2005. The same space, pushing the same thing, writing memorandums, sometimes almost giving up. But I want to encourage us, don't give up. Two, I think we also need to start, and that's something I'm being very deliberate, to celebrate people who do the right thing. And I want to say this without fear of contradiction. There are Kenyans working in our government systems who are honest, who are doing the right thing, but we don't celebrate them. And therefore, we almost make this look like it's just a gangster nation. No, there are Kenyans who are doing the right thing. And perhaps it's time for us to start celebrating them. You know, what if we all used our status to just talk about that chief, that teacher, that doctor, who actually shows up even when they have no reason to show up? A nurse who shows up in a dispensary, there is no drugs, there is, literally, she almost shows up to sympathize with the patients, but she shows up. If we started celebrating such people, we create a culture of positive reinforcement, because sometimes we don't celebrate enough. Even as we discussed about public spending, the projects that have been done and have been completed, roads where they have been connected and they have been completed, even as we discussed whether they were done at the right cost, let us celebrate what has been done right. But lastly, let us ask questions. Kenyans, we don't ask questions. This theory that you need to respect those in authority has been construed to mean you should not question. That is not true. We need to question. And questioning is not lack of respect. questioning is not being abusive. In fact, because we encourage Kenyans to send memorandums to different assemblies, county assemblies, national assembly, of late I'm encouraging people not to send suggestions, but to send questions. You don't have to have the answers. That's the reason why we are paying very senior people to do the analysis. We have research institutes. You just need to ask, why is my dispensary not working? You don't need to know how a nurse is posted and how KEMSA works and how the supply chain of drugs works. Because sometimes we go to forums and we are told, but give us solutions. There are people in that office who have been trained with public money to be able to provide those solutions. Let's ask questions. What would happen if all of us today, right now, before we left here, wrote to our members of parliament, including the one who snapped us, and asked, why are these things not going the way we expect? What are you doing with the cost of food? What are you doing with these roads that are not being, what are you doing with this matter? All of us asking those questions, we will bring, because it's public trust. The point I'm trying to say here, these are not private offices. This is public trust that has been entrusted to certain individuals. But as we do that, please remember my point number 2. Let us celebrate where things are being done right. And that we do, because then what we do is that we create energy for ourselves. Lastly, and because I see many young people here, and even in high school, this is our country. Whatever you hear, whatever you see, know that this is our country. Let us work to build our country. Because sometimes even at a personal level, there's a study that was done by Aga Khan Foundation some time back that I want to refer to, that many of us don't mind being corrupt so long as we are not caught. And many of us shun corruption so long as we are not benefiting. Question is, when you get that chance, will you be of integrity? And that's what I want to encourage you to start building, a culture of honesty, a culture of integrity, a culture of hard work. Hard work is not for idiots and lazy people and foolish people. Hard work actually can help build a country. All countries that I have been to have been built by the citizens of those countries. No British person will build Kenya for you. No German will build Kenya for you. No Japanese will build Kenya for you, because they are busy building their Germany. They are busy dealing with their Brexit. They are busy dealing with their economies. We also as Kenyans must deal with our own economy. We are the only ones who can build ourselves. So I encourage us, please, let's take action, let's be involved, and at a minimum, let's ask questions. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Allow me to respond on the cash transfers.
Dana, we can...
Just the cash transfer, the person with disability, I've realized
Are you able to do it in 30 seconds?
I will try my best. What I can tell you is we can direct you to the Ministry of Social Protection and so on. But what is happening in the country is we are at that point where you're just running away from being, let me use the example of auctioneers. When that happens, priorities shift. That is what is called fiscal consolidation. Kenya's government is operating on a very thin budget. So they create priorities, security and so on. Things like social protection, therefore, cash transfers to persons with disability, vulnerable children, pension, they are being neglected. It is the consequence of long-term indiscipline. And the most we can commit to do is help you in raising those questions and asking that the government rethinks the priorities that they are creating during this period of fiscal consolidation. But we hear your pain and we see you.
And thank you for sneaking in that point, very useful point. Ladies and gentlemen, to your frustration in mind, we have to close this. There's a session starting up next. But thank you so much for making time to be part of this. Like they all said, the power is with you. You have the power, so you take the action, and this is your country. Again, as Abraham said, it's not about hopelessness, it's about picking somewhere where you can start from tomorrow. So thank you so much for being part of this. Have a good afternoon.
Could we kindly give the moderator, the panelists, a hearty round of applause? We apologize that we have really rushed them. I would kindly request them to huddle together for an official photograph from our photographer. As they do that, I'd like to acknowledge Joan Kwamboka, who was the first sign interpreter. Could you kindly give her a round of applause? She's doing an amazing job. Thank you very much. One more time for Bonnie Tunya and our panelists. Tafadhali tupigeni makofi. No worries. Thank you so much.